there. If you are new to this channel, my name is Mary Mays. I'm a meteorologist with more than a decade of experience, and I'm here to talk about Tropical Storm Idalia. And this system just formed, and it could be having some pretty big impacts. I've been watching this for a little while, but now things are starting to become a lot more clear. So let's talk about what's happening right now. Okay, guys, here is Idalia, and you can see the center of circulation right there. That's not a great, drawing of a circle there, but you get the picture. And basically what we're doing is keeping a close eye on this because it is hanging out right now in the Strait of the Yucatan, or the Yucatan Strait, I should say, and it's getting stronger. It is a tropical storm, and it's got a center of circulation. On top of that, we've had hurricane hunters flying through. That's going to continue, both the NOAA and the U.S. military hurricane hunters. And basically, we're going to get a lot more information to put in our weather models. So we're already starting to get a better picture of where this is headed. And if you're on the west coast of Florida, you really need to pay attention and start those hurricane preparations right now if you're in the cone. So let's talk about the cone. And you can see that things are becoming more organized. It is still interacting with the Yucatan Peninsula, but things are getting pretty active. So the National Hurricane Center is the best of the best. These are the hurricane experts. This is what you should look at and pay attention if you're anywhere within the cone. And basically, this storm could hit anywhere from the Panhandle to maybe even the Tampa area, maybe even below. This cone will likely shift a bit as we head into the next couple of days. But we are expecting this storm to become a hurricane as it heads into the Gulf of Mexico, where it's going to encounter very warm water and likely make landfall possibly along the Big Bend region of Florida by midweek. Looks like Wednesday morning. Now, timeline could shift. It could be Tuesday night, could be Wednesday morning, maybe even Wednesday afternoon. These things are going to be adjusted a little bit, but we're starting to really get a good view of what's going to happen. We're likely to see a midweek landfall and likely a hurricane. Right now, National Hurricane Center is expecting just a hurricane, not a major hurricane, which is a category 3, 4, or 5. That being said, even if it's a category 1 or 2, it could still do a lot of damage. And there's no guarantee that this intensity forecast won't change. We could end up with a major hurricane. That's in the realm of possibility. So you need to just monitor the forecast and make sure you're making those preparations. You don't have to get scared. You just need to stay prepared. Take a look at your evacuation routes. Make sure that you have, food, water, if you're going to stay. And those are the things that are most important, And these are the preparations you should be planning to make at any time during hurricane season if you live in a vulnerable area. Now, if this system does take the track that the National Hurricane Center does have it taking, it'll be a tropical storm as it heads into Georgia and areas like Savannah and to Charleston, Jacksonville, even Orlando. Gonna have to pay attention to this because you would be on the right side of the storm most likely, which is usually the one that's the stronger side and more likely to produce tornadoes. So it's not just the coast that deals with hurricanes. Inland can see flash flooding, tornadoes. There's a lot of things that can happen. And even, as a tropical storm, it's still a dangerous storm. And it would move back into the Atlantic and then likely off the coast of the Carolinas, give or take. Or it may take a track through the Carolinas, or it may just go through Florida. You got to remember, the cone, it could be anywhere between those two edges. And it can make it difficult because a lot of times your eye is drawn into the center and you think that's exactly where it's heading. Well, it's not. That's their best guess, but it could be anywhere in between these two lines. That's the margin of error. So... And by the way, also, it's pronounced Idalia. I had to look it up because I'm from the deep south, and in Georgia, we have a city called Vidalia. So in my head, I was calling it Idalia. It is Idalia, which is lovely. So in terms of tropical storm force winds, looks like you got a pretty good chance of seeing them, into Florida, even into South Georgia, if this system takes the track that they are expecting right now. Here's the thing, the track is likely going to change, and let's take a look at what the models are doing. And it is difficult to get the messaging right at this point, because if you live in a prone area and you've experienced hurricanes, a lot of times you're going to hope for that most optimistic track, the one that misses you. And sometimes if you're not paying attention, the forecast changes. So I like to talk about, what could happen in terms of the worst case scenario and the better case scenario. So let's take a look at kind of the worst case scenario, and that is that this system gets really strong while it's here just off the Yucatan. So if this system kind of meanders a little bit, and this is the hurricane, I always have to do this. I always forget the exact name. It is the Hurricane Analysis and Forecast System. So this is a pretty new product, and I am showing you the one off of Tropical Tidbits, by the way, which is the best. Love them. But this system right here, this Hurricane Analysis Forecast System, I always forget what the acronym means. It's a pretty new product, but this has been kind of consistently a little bit more aggressive. And what I'm showing you is called the parent model, which kind of shows you the bigger picture. But there's also the option to, you get two different versions. There's HAFS-A and B, and what they would show you is, kind of track the storm along as it starts to develop. And that one's actually pretty useful too, but it's the same thing, just different viewpoints, and then also two different runs of the model. So this has it as a tropical storm kind of gaining strength, getting a little bit stronger, and this model run has kind of shifted the track a bit, a little bit closer to the west coast of Florida, and it does have it making landfall as likely a relatively strong storm. However, it's not quite as strong as it was yesterday, which is good news, but it does show it kind of having a different track than it did yesterday. And it is good to keep up with these different runs of the models. And, if I lived in Tampa right now, I would really be watching this very carefully, especially. But yeah, so this is likely going to be a hurricane, most likely a 1 or 2. Not a guarantee it's going to be a major hurricane, but still, it doesn't matter if it's a tropical storm, a tropical depression, category 1 or 2 hurricane. Any of those can have big impacts on you. Let's take a look at the different run, the B run of this. And this has it kind of similar position. This run actually does have it a little bit stronger. So what is the reason for the difference in these two versus also, the Euro and the GFS? And we're going to get to that. But right now, here's the view here. This one actually has it, the B run of this has it as a more powerful storm. This actually does still have it as what would be likely a major hurricane. So that is something to keep in mind. This system, these models have been kind of a little bit stronger with this system, a little bit more aggressive with this system. A Euro has been consistently showing a weaker system moving through. And this one does kind of follow it, the storm as it develops. So there it is off the Yucatan, moving through the Yucatan Strait. Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula both have tropical storm warnings on them right now. And then this is the Euro having it mainly as possibly a category 1, maybe 2 hurricane, most likely a hurricane, but not as strong as some of the other models are showing. And the reason for this is the Euro is showing a little bit more dry air getting in. And I am going to hop over to Weather Bell, and this is showing you that dry air there in that tan color. And the Euro is showing that dry air infiltrating a little bit sooner in the system's lifespan. So that would weaken it. You can see that kind of tan color gets sucked in to the developing storm, into the tropical storm. So that would limit development. Now, GFS is showing kind of a slightly stronger system. It doesn't show quite as much of that tan color getting in. Look at that. It kind of provides a little bit of a force field, and that's because GFS is showing a stronger system earlier. So if this tropical storm, Idalia, becomes a hurricane as it's over the Yucatan Strait, or as it just starts to move into the Gulf, if it strengthens pretty quickly, then we're likely going to see a stronger storm moving into Florida because the dry air just isn't at that point going to be enough to weaken it, because a hurricane at that point, it's already providing its own moisture. It's kind of sucking it up from the ocean. Whereas if it happens a little bit earlier, if the dry air gets in when it's a tropical storm, then it would actually probably weaken it. So Euro is still kind of holding on to possibly dry air working its way in. GFS is thinking that's a little less likely, but you can see some of the dry air would get in, and it's having a weaker storm. So GFS showing still a hurricane. Euro showing a weaker storm, likely still a hurricane though. And then, the HAFS, the Hurricane Analysis Forecast models, are showing a more powerful storm. However, it just depends on the early development and what it does when it heads into the Gulf. So if this moves into the Gulf and it really has its act together, if it's stronger by that point, and the Gulf waters, you have to remember, are very warm, we could have something called rapid intensification with the storm. It's not outside of the realm of possibility. It could become a major hurricane. However, right now, the National Hurricane Center and a lot of other meteorologists are thinking more, a Category 1, maybe 2 hurricane as it makes landfall. So, in story, what you need to know about this storm is that the best scenario would be that you're prepared and you're ready for whatever is heading your way. If you're in the cone, make sure you're paying attention. Remember that cone can shift. I would say anywhere from, Mobile, Alabama down to Fort Myers. Watch this storm. The more likely scenario is that it's turning east a little bit sooner. There's a trough that's going to kind of steer it in that direction. That's going to be moving through early next week. So that's why we're going to kind of see that northerly movement. We'll have a little trough move through. It's going to kind of bring the storm up. The big question is, does that dry air get there soon enough to weaken the storm? And what happens when it gets over those super warm waters of the Gulf? So I say pay attention to the National Hurricane Center, pay attention to your local news, your meteorologists who are, tracking this carefully. There are experts out there. You don't want to panic. You want to make sure that you're prepared for what's heading your way. And the reason I mentioned that worst case scenario is because it's not outside of the realm of possibility that this could strengthen rapidly and be really powerful when it makes landfall. However, I usually go with the National Hurricane Center because they are the experts, and that's the forecast I pay most attention to. I like to look at all the different scenarios, and I do like to show you those scenarios. But the most important thing is, the National Hurricane Center, they are the experts. This is what they're thinking right now. Bottom line, start your hurricane preparations if you're in the cone, and make sure you're paying attention if you're close to the cone even, because it can shift. However, intensity forecasts and our track forecasts especially have gotten a lot better in recent years. And this could be a tricky system to watch because it's going to develop pretty quick. And we're already seeing that situation where it's a tropical storm. As it becomes a hurricane, we're really going to know a lot more in the next 24 to 48 hours. So I will have more updates for you, and I just hope you stay safe. So thank you so much for watching this. I'm going to link Tropical Tidbits. They have a Patreon too if you want to support them, because they really have some excellent graphics and excellent videos on hurricanes, a lot of excellent analysis. So that's a great website to go to. I know a lot of folks who aren't meteorologists might not know about it, but it's wonderful, especially if you're a weather nerd. And once again, pay attention to what the National Hurricane Center is saying. Pay attention to what your local weather service office, your local meteorologist, whether on TV or whatnot, even national outlets, just make sure you're paying attention to all the different scenarios. And just remember, the National Hurricane Center, they are the experts. They know more about hurricanes than anyone else. So make sure you are just ready. Storms, they can develop quickly. They can intensify quickly, unfortunately. And we just want to make sure that you're as safe as possible as meteorologists. So just prepare and, pay attention. Those are the two things you need to know. So thank you so much for watching this video. I will have another one tomorrow and possibly even earlier if things get a little wild this afternoon or evening. But thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and take care.